Welcome back. You're watching a high-level conversation on how to fight the economic virus, and we're joined by hugely influential businessmen cutting across several important sectors. I want to introduce once again R.C. Bhargava, Chairperson Maruti Suzuki, Vikram Kirloskar, Vice Chairperson Toyota Kirloskar Motors, Chandrajit Banerjee, Director General CII, Suresh Narayanan, Chairperson Managing Director Nestle, Ajay Bijli, Chairperson and Managing Director PVR Cinemas, A.D. Singh, founder of the Olive Group's group of restaurants, and Deep Kalra, founder and Chief Executive Officer of Make My Trip. In this part of our broadcast, I want to focus on what ideas our guests have on minimizing job losses, saving companies, and yet at the same time making the least demands from government. Because if everybody has a very big list of expectations, then those expectations cannot be met. I'll start with R.C. Bhargava for the automobile sector, and then maybe you can zoom out and tell us about the rest of India Inc. as well. What do you believe companies should be doing, sectors should be doing, and the government should be doing so that job losses are minimized and as many companies as possible can stay in business?
You know, Rahul, as has been mentioned earlier, the auto sector is a very linked kind of segment where the small industries, the micro industries, in fact, what tier 3 vendors, micro industries and the small industry and the larger industry are all linked. And depending on what is the production from all of them, we will be able to produce volumes. What it looks like to me is that at the beginning, the challenge is going to be to start production at all, because even one or two vendors were not able to produce because they are in a seriously red-hit area or in a red-hit area will bring everything to a stop. And I think we'll have to find an answer to this problem in the next few days once we have done a complete analysis. Secondly, the production which is going to take place, even if all the supply chain is working, is not going to be anywhere near 100% of capacity, because with the restrictions on imposed by the social distancing, shifts not overlapping, canteen eating habits and various things, we think that the actual capacities will be only maybe around 70 to 75% of the full capacities. This is yet to be fully worked out. Now, given that, it's obvious that the full workforce will not find productive employment. And it's a problem which has to be looked at seriously, both by industry and by government, because if this was a short-term measure like this 3 weeks or another 3 weeks, I think most of industry would be easily able to take care of all employment and not there. But if this is going to continue for 12 months or 18 months till we fully normalize after a vaccine is available, a cure is available, then the problem becomes of a much larger magnitude. And I think both industry and government will have to get together to find how to deal with this employment problem.
No, but it's interesting.
One other point I'd like to make, Rahul. Employment in the automobile industry, particularly the car industry, is really not in the actual production of cars, including the vendors and the component manufacturing. The much larger amount of employment is created when the cars hit the market, and then people want drivers, there are salespeople, there are people arranging finance, people arranging invoicing, the repair of cars, the repair of accidented cars, and various other activities which get generated when more and more cars are in the market. And that is where I think it's important to ensure that that kind of employment keeps growing. That means the sale of cars keep growing, even if it is at 70%, they're all sold, because that will, to a large extent, help the employment, not in the car segment, not in the manufacturing segment, but in the economy generally.
Okay. Now, Chandrajit Banerjee, if you're sitting on the kind of cash reserves that Mr. Bhargava is, then you can say, okay, we can ride out the storm for a while, but there are many companies that are very badly off when it comes to cash flows and are now already getting desperate. Do you have a sense of what level of job losses we'll have to deal with, how many companies could go under, and what do you believe should be done in the medium term to try and minimize the damages?
So, there's a challenge. The small and the medium companies, they would be desperate, and then they will have this huge pressure, and therefrom where the job losses that we are speaking about would come much more. The larger companies would be able to tide off this time for a little longer period of time, but then also they would also soon be very much under pressure. So what's really required is a sort of a very different stimulus for the country. And one approach that we have been recommending on the economic revival package is really twofold, if one can say. A part through the fiscal expansion, which is directed towards the bottom of the pyramid. And the second one is an enhanced credit to industry through banks. And so let us not try to also use all our horsepower at one go. This is going to continue for a little while, and therefore we need to be careful that the dosage that we look at. So the recommendation would be really to give an additional sort of 2% odd to the distress section through a combination of DBT for BPL or DBT for JAM and DBT for Manrega. So we need to spread this out very, very, very prudently. And as you talk about jobs, as I told you, that the biggest job issue is really with the MSME, and that's the biggest stress. And therefore, what I would strongly recommend, and we have been recommending from CII, that all enterprises really be given an additional loan limit, for 3 months of their wage bill. And this will enable the payment to workers for MSMEs. That reduces the pressure on job losses. Secondly, reconstruction term loans should also be provided to the small and the medium scale sector, and that should be with an interest subvention of 5%. So we really need to be very calibrated in our approach when we bring in this fiscal, which is hopefully not too late from now as we are opening up. We need the economic package for revival to be very, very prudent to navigate through this challenge that we might face on job losses.
Now, Deep Kalra, since your business has virtually come to a standstill, have you had to lay off people? What percentage of the workforce have you had to, say, for example, send on furlough? And how do you hope to minimize losses to your employees, given the fact that the road to recovery is going to be so slow and painful?
Yeah, Rahul, thankfully no layoffs yet. We have healthy cash reserves, which obviously will not last us forever, but we have about 200 million on our balance sheet, which will definitely help us. What we have taken is a different approach. We have looked on the people side of the business with a microscope, and we figured the best thing to do is to take deep cuts at senior levels. My co-founder and me, we've taken 100% cuts. We announced that 3 weeks ago. The leadership team has taken 50% cuts, and down the line, we've gone till manager level with 10% cuts. So I think the idea was that, listen, let's all kind of brace ourselves for this. Let's lessen the overall burden, and so that we don't have to resort to layoffs, which are going to be particularly hard at this point of time. Now it's a question of how long this takes. Hopefully we will be able to calibrate this well with other expenses that have been cut. We're a low fixed cost model. Most of our costs are variable, so we have a lot of marketing costs, which we've been able to cut completely. We've been able to negotiate with various other service providers, including hosting companies, outsourcing companies, etc., and manage the best we can. But I think it'll be fair to say we are reviewing this on a constant basis. And it's not only a monthly exercise, it's sometimes actually a fortnightly exercise, and it's no fun at all. So we can't wait for the day when we start seeing some bookings come back.
We feel your pain.
Even
I think everyone who's watching would feel the same level of pain. Vikram Kirloskar, what are your ideas on trying to save as many companies as we can? As President CII, how do you minimize job losses? How do you save as many companies as you can who are not as fortunate as you and Maruti and have the kind of cash reserves that Mr. Bhargava would have?
There are two dates in my mind when I look at my planning and suggestions to others. The first date is when some kind of medicine comes, or there's a mixture of medicine which has been approved, which will help you take care of the COVID illness when you get it, and it'll get you out safe, maybe either in a hospital or either at home. And the second, of course, is the vaccine date. We are hoping, I'm being very optimistic and hoping that the first date comes earlier than later. I think that will be the first confidence building measure in the country that, yes, at least if I get it, there's a potential cure and I may not be dead. So I think if we start looking at our businesses at these two dates and keep track of what is happening in this, then we can make a medium-term or a short-term plan and a longer-term plan. I understand the first date could be as low as 15 days or 3 months or something. So I think that gives us a chance to take a little higher risk short-term plan and see how many people we can retain, do the bank borrowings, etc., whatever the government can give, that will help us retain people. But if you once you start getting into the longer-term scenario beyond that, then I think companies will have to see how they will stay solvent. And to stay solvent and competitive with a lower break-even number, if the economy doesn't grow the way we were hoping it would in the past, and it's not expected to grow, then lower break-even numbers means reduce our costs. How does all industry, all businesses would be trying to reduce their cost? And unfortunately, while reducing costs, one of the big issues is the cost of labor, cost of management, and it's not just at the particular factories, throughout the value chain. So people will be looking at trying to stop things that are not adding value and are not necessary.
Okay.
So this is going to put a lot of pressure on employment, very seriously.
AD Singh, even though most people won't believe it, as a sector, the hospitality sector operates with very limited margins. How do you think you can approach the situation of minimizing job losses? I have many friends who run some of the important restaurants. They're all bleeding, and the employment, the nature of contract isn't very fixed, and they're not being able to pay. So how do you try and deal with that, Edie?
It's very difficult, Rahul. The F&B industry is made up of tens of thousands of small companies and small players. My group, the Olive Group, is probably one of the larger ones and one of the more experienced ones. We've been in the business over 20 years, 30 years. And yet, even for us, unfortunately, unlike the Kalra, we have no reserves to meet something like this. So staying solvent is one of the big struggles for everybody. And equally important for us, and I think everybody understands, is ensuring that our employees are getting enough to tide them through this period. And that's, I think, where in our industry, government support would be required. My suggestion to that firstly would be the government made some good suggestions with regards allowing people to withdraw from their PF accounts. That's a bit of a safety net. And secondly, we have been contributing month after month to employees into an ESIC fund, and the government has full details of all employees. They should release from the ESIC fund directly to these employees at this time till the lockdown gets over, enabling them to survive this.
Okay. Suresh Narayanan, because your sector has largely been able to operate despite the lockdown, would that mean that when it comes to job losses and the durability of companies in the FMCG space are likely to see less losses when it comes to jobs going forward?
I think, Rahul, it's a very good question, and for me, it is very clear that the consumer goods space must be grateful and must be humble at this moment. And large companies and companies like mine, which have got a reputation, which have been around for a long time, earning the trust, have good balance sheets. I look at it as a moment of insaniyat. For me, that is at the core of who we are as a company. Protecting my people, I look at it in terms of 3 layers, protecting my people. So I've already told them that, look, I don't want to go after your jobs because I don't want to trample on your self-respect. A job is more than an income. So we look at it from protecting our jobs, but I need your help in looking at the cost lines, and really some of what Deep talked about, some of what Mr. Bhargava and also Vikram talked about are areas that we are looking at very aggressively. For me, the second layer are really the suppliers, and I have got quite a few suppliers who are classified in the MSME sectors. So these are the people whom we are reaching out as a company, and I have told my team that, look, please ensure that none of these people, I repeat, none of these people get out of business, because I think if a company that has got a large footprint is capable of protecting that footprint, albeit at a certain cost. And I think we are willing to look at it from the point of view of what it will cost us to do. We should protect it. The third layer is a layer of farmers. I don't know if you know, Rahul, but we deal with 100,000 farmers in the Punjab. They have been with us for 60 years. 66,000 of these farmers are women farmers. And one of the things that we have done is for every single day, every single liter of milk that these farmers have given us, we have been processing. And I promise that we will continue to process it. I think it is important to live by the principles of humanity, to live by the principles of insaniyat. Yes, we have been blessed a lot by the consumers, blessed a lot by the environment. And I think since many of the large companies, I don't speak for the MSMEs, which I think Chandrajit and others have already talked about, the kind of packages that they would need. But large companies have responsibilities, have large footprints. And I think this is the time to leverage that footprint to ensure that you minimize the impact on job losses.
Compassion through corporates is crucial, and it's always important, and it can never have been more important than it is right now. Can you take care of your employees while you guard your business, but can margins be allowed to come down? Ajay, Bijli, you're worried about when people will start coming back to the cinema. So to what extent have you had to let go of people? What are you hearing about other people in the same business? How are they coping? What can be done to minimize those losses?
Well, the first question you asked, will people come back? And I answered that earlier as well. Already a lot of surveys have happened in China, in UK, in US, where the pent-up demand for people to go out and watch movies definitely is there. So that I'm not worried about in India, because out-of-home entertainment, movies, cinemas, not because it's my own business, is something which is very popular, so people will come back. On the employment part, I have to talk about PVR as well as the whole industry. PVR, with the grace of God, we did our QIP, we are okay. And we've done similar stuff as what Deep said. Senior people have taken a 50% cut, but the frontline staff, they're all on minimum wages. People are selling popcorn, Pepsi, tickets. It's sacrilegious to ask them to leave, so we haven't let anybody go. But if you look at the overall industry, we have 200,000 people employed by about 8,000 screens in India, single screens, multiplexes and all. That's only the direct employment. And then you have families depending on those 200,000 people. And then you also have the film industry, because even film industry, the whole film business is about 15,000 crores in India. 10,000 is represented by theatrical business still. So even they are dependent. So what we've done in our various representations that we've made to the government is that look at the whole industry. We have a symbiotic relationship with the film industry and the real estate sector. So therefore, it's very important to do what the other governments have done. Nothing, substantial, because we know they've got enough on their platter. But wage subsidies is something that is being done. Leisure industry is clubbed with hospitality and tourism, because that's a low-hanging fruit in terms of vulnerability. And soft loans with longer moratoriums, easy terms, and GST and VAT deferment has happened a lot all over the world.
Okay.
These are three things that we've asked for. We can bring our ticket prices down as well, because consumers can come, not just me. Again, I'm talking about the whole industry, 9,000 screens, not just PVR's 850 odd screens. So these three things we've asked for, which can help, forget about stimulus. Just now it is just relief, sustenance package for the whole industry. So my situation is something, I don't want to be that myopic in my view. I have to talk about the whole industry, because a lot of jobs, a lot of people, and two big industries, real estate, which is retail, mall development, as well as the film industry, is highly dependent on the exhibition industry.
So even on the day of a general budget, you won't get to hear such a swath of industry sectors and the top people in each industry sharing their thoughts on what needs to be done. But the situation we are grappling with right now is far more complex than any budget announcement. Therefore, I am very grateful that R.C. Bhargava, Vikram Kirloskar, Chandrajit Banerjee, Suresh Narayanan, A.D. Singh, Deep Kalra, you could take out time for joining us for this Mega India Inc. Virtual brainstorm. This is a very crucial conversation. Just as this show was being broadcast, my phone has been filled with messages from other industrialists wanting to come and participate and requests for setting up another such conversation. I promise we will do that, because as we focus on lives, we also have to focus on ensuring that we can save as many livelihoods as is possible. And that's where all these brains need to come together and work on, as R.C. Bhargava put it so well, a plan which requires industry to do as much as it can without depending so much on government. And as Suresh Narayanan said, corporate compassion, need to build on that. Thank you very much for joining us. Deeply appreciate you making out time. Goodbye. Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kanwal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.